And once again, to start, my name is Janine. I'm a graduating senior at St. Peter's University, and I'm going to ask you both to please state your names and spell it slowly.
So I am Marylou Tibaldo-Bongiorno. So that's Marylou, and that's one word. There's no capital to the L. And Tibaldo is T as in Tom, I, B as in boy, A, L, D as in David, O. And hyphen, which came from Jerome, is the Bongiorno, which is B as in boy, O-N, Giorno.
Okay, and I haven't prepared this, but my name is Jerome Peter Bongiorno. That's Jerome, Peter Peter, and Bongiorno Bongiorno.
Today is May 28th, 2021, and the purpose of this meeting is to celebrate St. Peter's 150th anniversary.
Woo! Woo-hoo! Big
So welcome.
celebration.
Yes. Welcome again, Mr. and Mrs. Bongiorno. I'm so glad we have an opportunity to talk about you and your time at St. Peter's. And to start things off, can you please tell me a little bit about your childhood? What was it like? Where you grew up and how that impacted you?
Would you start, Jerome?
Well, I was born in Brooklyn. I mean, we're living now in Newark, New Jersey, but I was born in Brooklyn, New York, into an Italian-American family, and my parents are Sicilian and Sicilian-American. You know, I always kid that they're not Italian, they're Sicilian. So my parents are Sicilian and Sicilian-American. I'm the middle child and have two brothers, and we all work with my dad, who was a contractor, and we moved to Staten Island when I was in 8th grade. I went to Catholic grammar school, I went to Catholic high school, and of course, a Catholic college, St. Peter's. And we're a musical family. Everybody played an instrument. And I learned to sing and play the guitar, and I had bands, many bands.
And I am first generation Italian-American born and lived my entire life here in Newark, New Jersey, where Jerome and I have lived for many years. My parents are both from Northern Italy, and they built a home on Tiffany Boulevard in Newark in what was a very close-knit community. My older brother and I grew up in this Italian-American neighborhood with lots of family very close by. So that was wonderful and still is. I went to Catholic grammar school, high school, and St. Peter's College. It was known as college at the time. And I took school very, very seriously, and I love to write and take photographs, which was a passion of my father's.
So you both have very Catholic, very artistic backgrounds.
Yes, absolutely. It was definitely a very strong part of our upbringing.
Okay. And would you say that's something that brought you to St. Peter's, or was it something else maybe?
Well, I would say that I went to St. Peter's because it was a Catholic college. I mean, it was also a 45-minute ride from Staten Island, which made it, you know, fairly easy to commute. But the fact that it was Catholic, that was, you know, very important for me.
Yes, and for me too, certainly. It had a wonderful reputation. There were people in the neighborhood who were successfully enrolled at St. Peter's, graduated from St. Peter's, so I knew all about that. It was close to home. That was key for me. And then I was very fortunate to also be awarded a full presidential scholarship. So that was an incentive for sure. The great support that St. Peter's offered.
Great, so no college debt.
That came later with grad school, but that's another story. Yeah.
So what did you both major in or minor in at St. Peter's?
I majored in biology. You know, I mean, I was always interested and very good in the sciences in grammar school and high school. And before college, and even during college, I volunteered in hospitals and I worked in research labs. So there was never any doubt in my mind that I was going to be a biology major.
For me, it wasn't so clear cut. I started as a business major thinking that sounded really interesting to me and open-ended, but I realized very, very quickly that biology there was nothing like biology to challenge me intellectually. And so I majored in bio and then as my major, right? That was my major. And then I did take courses in the honors program, which really satisfied that artistic part. So I was very glad that St. Peter's as a liberal arts college was able to instill that, to say, hey, there's something out there that you should be well balanced, even if you're interested in the sciences. Here you can nourish yourself and flex some of those artistic muscles. So I did graduate in cursu honorum, so as part of the honors program. And Jerome and I met in the biology lab, right? So we were partners. We were dissecting a fetal pig together.
Well, I would dissect the fetal pig. You would tell me what to do.
Well, I don't know about that, but I was, yes, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting dynamic I have to think about. But that's how we met. Such a romantic story, right? But it was in many ways. Yes, we got to work closely together, right?
And what year were you when you met? Were you a freshman, sophomores?
Yeah, we were. It was freshman year.
Yeah, I mean, we were
Started dating sophomore year.
Were we in the same biology class?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 That's why we did the
Dr.
section.
Giuliani, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Dr. Yes, we were that was freshman year. So, I knew enough to take biology in first year. So, I was thinking business. I think it was, offered. And we started dating sophomore year, right in the fall of sophomore year. Yeah. Right.
So you were friends first?
Yes, absolutely. It was a period of friendship, right? Because it was that first year.
A very short period.
That's true. But then it did, because we were dating in the fall of sophomore year. Yeah, I was trying to figure that out when we were talking about all this. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I felt like I was and still do, luckiest person in the universe.
That's very kind. That's very kind to say that. Yes, I'm certainly very fortunate to me. And there were a lot of students who were meeting their life partners at the time around us. So yeah, love was in the air, right? And it's a very strong community and a very safe community, safe to express our views, learn from different cultures. I mean, it was really the first immersion for me of multicultural education, because the prior existence, like high school was, very homogeneous, and so this was a way to really begin to broaden our understanding of the world, and to start understanding, even though we didn't really express our social justice work until later, but to really have the foundations for why it was so important to have a moral compass.
So would you say St. Peter's was diverse back then based on all those views that you were exposed to?
Not certainly anywhere close to now, but it was for me, first of all, in terms of gender. So I came from single sex education, so did Jerome. So that was, first a broadening of that. Second is that, especially in the theology classes, we started to learn about other world religions in a way that high school did not expose us. And then in terms of diversity of students, I mean, it was Jersey City being this hub, a more cosmopolitan place, right, than some of these small suburban towns where we went to school. It attracted students from all different nationalities, beliefs. And so I think we started certainly to get that exposure. Yeah, and become friends, close friends with people who were not necessarily like us in terms of our background.
What about the professors? Were a lot of the professors Jesuits back then?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Very much so.
Yeah.
There were Father Heedy stands out for us, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He married us actually
No.
at the Basilica Cathedral of the Sacred Heart. We got married in 1986. So he was Dean of Students then.
Right.
And he was just a fabulous presence, and as you know, a Jesuit, and many others too. Father McMullen, who I was close to. I mean, the list it goes on. You know, Father St. George and chemistry. I mean, we have wonderful stories of all of these, you know, Jesuits who were very much present, not only in the classroom, but also, even though it was a commuter college at the time, almost predominantly, and we were commuting, that they were, you know, we felt a part of their family.
Yeah, and also it was very familiar, like for a person like me, you know, my high school was Monsignor Farrell in Staten Island. It was Christian Brothers. And so, you know, and now you're with the Jesuits, and, you know, it's very familiar for me, that atmosphere. And like I said before, you know, it was one of the things that drew me to the college.
Yes, these Jesuits are very learned men, and yet had wonderful sense of humor, which is so critically important, and a love and passion for their subject matter, but then broad subject matter. So, you know, we could socialize and be with them and feel very much nourished and nurtured in a safe place. And I always say that it's a safe place because imagine where it wouldn't be, where you know, you were allowed to express different viewpoints and organize, and they would actually encourage that.
Yeah, Father Andy speaks so many languages, and he's always correcting my pronunciation because he knows how things are actually supposed to be pronounced. So it's great.
Wow, I need that right now, because that's something I definitely have my own, since I can remember my own pronunciation. And that would be so key to have, right? Because that environment and usage of those words in context, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge gift.
So were you involved in any extracurricular activities at St. Peter's? I know biology is very demanding. But did you join any clubs or any
Yes.
activities?
Absolutely, that was so much fun.
Well, I had, I was involved in extracurricular activities. I started the pep band.
Father Hebe got you to do that.
Yeah, that was great. And we played at basketball games and other events. I was also in the men's glee club, so that was fun. I also tutored and taught nursing students. Also, Marylou and I did our senior yearbook together. In fact, we came up with this new style yearbook that had a see-through opening in the book's cover. And of course, since we graduated in 1984, this idea was influenced by Orwell's 1984, you know, Big Brother's watching. I think, do we have that?
I do, I'm gonna grab it. Let me just,
Yes, we actually have
let's
the
see.
yearbook right here.
Yes.
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
see our thing. Okay, if you could see, and it's a see-through cover. Not that I'm trying to sell this to anybody, but you can actually see through it. Okay, can you see me?
Yes, I can see your eye. That's so cool.
So if I could see you, you could see me. Anyway, so that was the see-through cover. That was something new for us. And so we had a lot of fun putting that together.
The reason this is on my side desk is because we were doing some reorganizing, and I found this one, which was still covered in its own plastic, and I said I better bring this upstairs and take good care of it, because we worked so hard. So I was one of the co-editors of this wonderful peacock pie, it's called, and I noticed last night when I opened it up that there's a photo of what the campus looked like. And then, Jerome, I noticed the quad that Phil Aguirre, our good friend Phil, did a more futuristic view of it.
Oh, I see.
He
built,
signed it.
He built vertically. Oh, very nice.
Yeah,
Very nice.
Of
Yes.
what the campus could look like.
Yeah.
And I had not remembered that we did this. So, and this was a little bit of a cheat sheet, because I looked last night at some of the activities I had done, because I wrote for the literary magazine too. But I remember this being such a wonderful undertaking, and a way for us to really use our creative.
Well, that was the first time I had ever taken photographs, and after they were printed, and then taken them and cropped them.
Oh,
That was the first time I had ever started to crop and recompose images, so that you have an image, but it looks even better after you crop it.
We used to mark them up, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody would print them that way.
Yeah, because we had
Right.
so many
Yeah, I remember
photographs, I
that.
had this ability to recompose many photographs, and it really gave me an idea of what composition really was and how it can help the image. So that was new to me.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
I was so into it. This is how I was so into it, that because what I would do is I would mark it out and then I would cut it. And I was so into it, I didn't realize what I was doing, but I cut my finger.
Did you?
Yeah, I cut my finger and I had to go to the emergency room.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember this.
Yeah, so this little mark on my finger is my debt
Indelible.
to composition.
Wow.
I know.
Well, it's
That was
funny
done on
because
the year.
Jerome edits our films now, so this.
We don't
was
use the
your-
razor blade
No.
anymore. Of course, it's
We
done on the
used to
computer.
we used to cut film
Yeah,
at
that's
NYU.
right.
When I went to NYU grad film,
That's
the first year we cut film and literally had to, that little cutter that was pretty sharp too.
Right.
Oh wow, I didn't realize it. So did I take you to the emergency room?
Probably.
Oh
Now,
my.
if you don't remember, I'm
Yes, deeply wounded.
yeah,
right?
I'm deeply wounded.
Maybe I suppressed it because
Probably,
it was yeah, traumatic.
Right.
But that was a very key part of my work there, and also did so much tutoring. It was a cheat sheet. I realized how much tutoring I did and taught nurses too. When we were seniors, we both taught nurses, and that was a wonderful taste of what was to come, because teaching has been part of our lives and still is a very big part of our lives.
I wasn't aware we had nursing students when you guys were in St. Peter's. I thought the nursing school just had recently opened a few years ago.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's-
interesting. And and I remember they would recruit us to teach them. I remember the lab and everything. Weren't we in the
Downstairs.
yeah, exactly.
In Gannon Hall.
Gannon Hall, right? And it was a great experience because the nursing students, and I don't think they were all female necessarily. I don't remember, but
Yeah.
I don't remember. I think they were mostly female.
Yeah.
But they're just so passionate about, they were going to go out and do work, so they really wanted to learn.
And did you become friends with any of those nurses? I'm curious about the friendships that you had at St. Peter's, because you mentioned the other couples that met at St. Peter's. You mentioned the nurses, and obviously you two started out as friends. So tell me a little bit about your friendships while you were at St. Peter's, and if you still keep in contact with any of those people.
That's a good question. I'll have to give that some thought. I think more at the time, Jerome had come from Monsignor Farrell, and he came with a group of students from there. And similar to me, I came from Queen of Peace High School, so I did come with a group of students. So we kind of had, but then you start to, it's wonderful to see that you started together as a group, and then as you met new people, that just expanded, right? So that, it's wonderful to see those relations, those friendships and relationships then grow and bring more people into it. We are close to Dr. Poyani, and it's interesting because we did not know her. I did not know her. Did you know her during your
I knew
college
of her.
years?
But
her, right?
I didn't have her as a teacher.
Such a towering presence and pioneer female. But we've stayed close to her now as we've grown through the Abbey. I think we sort of started through a film that we made called The Rule, and so yes. But is anyone else coming to mind as a friendship, St. Peter's?
You.
Yes, we were focused. Definitely, yes, and have crossed paths with people in different capacities over time. And it's always nice to have that connection, and certainly people that we didn't even know at the time. When we see that they're alumni, there's always a very special bond. Oh, and then we were very honored to receive the award from, you'll get it, which again links us to the broader Jesuit community, because when we were seniors, we were inducted into Alpha Sigma Nu, and oh yeah, there it is, Magis, right? It's called, and there's.
Yes, congratulations. I saw that actually. It's on their website.
Oh yes, we're very, very pleased, because what you see, as Jerome just held up, but I'll turn to see St. Ignatius Loyola's there, but the words are scholarship, loyalty, and service. Absolutely service. We were just talking to students this week, and we were talking about do for others, and that's certainly something that was instilled at St. Peter's. So whether it was through the tutoring programs, or they were so diverse, and we got to meet students from, English as a second language. It was just a great opportunity to engage with people that were outside our majors or our social network.
Great. And so since I've been at St. Peter's, the phrase I constantly hear is men and women for others. And my professors incorporate that into the classes. Sometimes we do like service projects and stuff like that. Did you hear that a lot while you were at St. Peter's, and did that influence you in any type of way?
Yes, I think that the idea of service then was always present. The idea that you're in a community and that you should be doing for others. So whether it manifested itself by becoming engaged as tutors, or, that was always part of it, or how you expressed your faith. But I think for both of us, it took time for us to evolve into social justice activists. And we use our films to basically talk about injustice. So our recent film, you want to say something about Rust? I think speaks to that. And Rust is just out on national PBS and in Canada. And I will send you a link, because it is streaming if you want to watch it. I think it speaks to our mission of reducing poverty in inner cities.
Well, as far as the Jesuit education, I'd say that the Jesuit education for us, coupled with a science education, are probably two foundations that have really given us a holistic way of creating our films. And what I mean by that is, for instance, our latest film, Rust, which actually premiered nationally and in Canada on PBS this month, it focuses on solutions to reducing inner city poverty and racism. So our educational foundations from St. Peter's led us not only to state that there's high poverty in our inner cities, but also ask the questions of how and why our cities got so impoverished. And then, we can't stop there. This Jesuit training demands that we also tackle the question of how to reduce poverty. So, going to St. Peter's and getting that Jesuit education, it kind of reminds us over and over to engage passionately in our vocation. And then, don't do any project halfway. You're either going to be engaged fully or you don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. When you commit to something, you have to do it for no other reason than the Latin, which is Sole Deo Gloria, glory to God alone. And that's been very much a foundation. I like the word foundation for our thinking. And once you do that, it frees you to do things to the best of your ability and for no other reason than to serve a greater purpose.
Right. You create your project. You don't do it for money. You create your project. You throw it on the altar and you offer it up to God. That's it. That's why you do it, and that's the end of the project. Then you move on to the next project.
And I was reading something recently that triggered another way of thinking by artists, and that is, once you complete something, a project, a film in our case, and then you assess it yourself, you honestly look at it and look at its strengths or its weaknesses and realize you now done the best you can. Then it doesn't matter whether you're praised or criticized for it, because you've put out, I'm certainly open to those things, but you've put out something that has given you a peaceful basis to learn from. And then it doesn't really matter.
And is that what you mean when you call yourselves social justice filmmakers? Because I watched a few videos where when you introduce yourself, that's what you say. And I was curious about that.
Well, when you talk about social justice, I mean, we live in Newark, so we see
Yeah.
the poverty every day. We see the effects of the poverty every day. And what are those effects? High crime and poor education, and people live in misery. So, you know, you can't help but say, you know, why is it like this? And what do we have to do to reduce it, reduce this poverty? And when you start to ask those questions and you start to engage in an activity like filmmaking that uncovers the reason and the solutions, that's social justice. Yeah.
Correct. And this film, Rust, is part of a trilogy, and we've screened the prior films on campus. And I know Dr. Johnson has invited us to bring Rust in the fall. So that'll be our great pleasure to engage in more dialogue about that. But it's important to state the problems, as Jerome said, but also to then find solutions. So the second film, the first film, Revolution 67, looked at all the conditions that led to a riot rebellion, a major one in Newark in 1967, which has stigmatized the city for a long time. And the second one, The Rule, went into the machinations of the greatest Catholic school, high school in the country, which is St. Benedict's Prep.
And it's not just the greatest Catholic high school, it's the greatest inner city school.
Yes, I should.
In the United States.
Yeah.
It gives these kids the education that they need to succeed.
With counseling.
Because when you see a public school in an inner city that doesn't succeed, the reason why it doesn't succeed is because it is not giving the kids what they need.
Totally agree. And counseling is such a huge part of that we actually caught up with one of the students from The Rule 10 years later, and he is featured in Rust because he said he was very troubled at that point. You see him as a sophomore in high school, and now 10 years later, not only did he finish high school, which was, you know, something that was questionable, he finished college, graduated from college, and he's now a social worker himself. So it's enormous success, and those types of successes happen frequently because for these students, and now it's opened up also to girls. So I shouldn't just say it's just a male single sex. They've opened up this year. It's co-educational to have the ability to have their problems addressed, all the baggage of living in the inner city dealt with, so that learning can begin. And so that was important for us. And then Rust culminates with solutions to inner city poverty and racism. And we started this several years ago without, you know, knowing what was going to come in terms of the killing of George Floyd, in terms of the whole coronavirus pandemic and how that affected people in terms of the economy and people's safety mechanisms and mental health. So releasing it now was a way for us now to really use it as a launch pad to say, here are time-tested solutions. We're not offering you something that's so, you know, from Mars. These are solutions that work, you know, jobs and stabilizing families and, you know, improving education, reducing racism. These are things that can be done. And we're hopeful that what we're seeing is that people from different political ideologies are able to find something in the film to relate to, so we could have that dialogue. So all of that comes back to our training. As scientists, truly, but also, even though we've migrated to the arts, we do a lot with science, but also as the products of Jesuit education.
Certainly.
Great. That's like amazing and an inspiration to all of us students at St. Peter's. So I was wondering, you talked about what you majored in college and your filmmaking. What was your transition like after college? What did you do after graduation? Did you go right into filmmaking?
No, that's a great question, Janine. I'm glad you asked it because I've been reflecting on that too. So we were very much on the science path. Jerome went to medical school, and I went to a doctoral program in neurophysiology. So right after college, we graduated, and that's what we were doing. While we were there for 2 years in those programs, we realized, I realized that there was something else calling that I couldn't do as, my side, job. It was something that was demanding our full attention. So we both taught. We went to use our skills. We taught in prep schools, Catholic schools, right? We went to teach in the Catholic school, and at the same time, we were trying to figure out how. And then Jerome, you could talk about your musical path. Jerome was very much into music and bands and writing and doing that part and fulfilling himself that way. And I was writing, playwriting, taking coursework, doing all of that until we realized. Do you want to say a little bit about that, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I was taking coursework in painting and drawing, so I was doing that. Also, I had a lot of bands, so like fulfilling the creative side, which is why we got out of our previous professions. We wanted to be more creative, and during that point, we were writing scripts, and then we started to create a film with an actor, and
that was so like from Mars,
which was from Mars, right?
Right.
But the idea of capturing it indelibly on film, because now it's there kind of forever, as long as you archive it correctly. That was very special.
Seminal for us.
Yeah, seminal, and was very special. I guess there's something spiritual about capturing it on an indelible surface and be able to replay it many, many times. But anyway, we created that film. It was a short film. It was a film we shot in Newark. And then Marylou said,
someone mentioned film school or having some kind of structure. Some of the people we were working with were products of film school, but at an undergraduate level. And I didn't know when the application process, it was really, I learned the word, I saw the word last night that struck me, numinous, which comes from this numen in Latin, meaning some kind of divine presence, something that's bigger than us, right? I felt a deep connection making that film and wanted to pursue it, but wanted some kind of guidance and structure, because we crave that as scientists, and we were always doing coursework and everything you just mentioned. We were working, as we were working things out. So applied to NYU's graduate film program, not realizing how competitive it was, how selective it was, and it just worked. I think because I had something to say at that point in my life, and that struck some of the people there. That's what they shared with me. And so that path to NYU's graduate film program opened up a whole life to us. And Jerome and I joked that we did a 2-for-1 there, because I was formally enrolled. He was still teaching at that time, doing other things, but it brought together all of his musical, literary, photography, editing, my literary, my photographs, my visual, and we could suddenly work together instead of separately with each other advising. And I think it was that ability to work together that creates that synergy, and it made us feel like this is the right path.
Well, you had said that you enjoyed it was invigorating being out filming and.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Yeah. And being out and working with actors, and then having this sense of wonder. It struck me one night when we were filming very late, and that was that part of that film. That was
Staten Island.
Right. I was just going to bring out that was in Staten Island. And it was, something that was just like it clicked. I remember just sort of feeling I found something that I want to pursue. So, you bring your work ethic to it. We bring our work ethic to everything. But it was a passion. And then NYU was such an incredible experience, like 3 years of very much like law school, 3 years and beyond of like a boot camp and wonderful creative people from all different disciplines. And then being able to, I remember the first year, here again, they're saying to us, make a documentary. And I was adamant about, oh my goodness, I'm here. what am I making, a documentary? I want to do fiction. And it was life-changing because we do fiction. It's very important. We're definitely fiction filmmakers, but documentary that became a tool for our social activism voice.
Yeah, and by the way, we taught, you said that already, that we taught sciences in high school, and that foundation gave a great organizational.
Yes, the scientific method, the same process is what we use in our films.
Right. But also to prepare for class and to understand that you have to teach it in a way where students will understand what you're saying is exactly the same ethic that goes into making a documentary.
Absolutely.
So, so teaching, especially high school kids for 10 years, you really get this idea of, how do I distill what people need to know, and how do I present it to them so that they're entertained and they can understand something that's valuable to them. That was definitely had through, teaching for so many years.
And teaching was always part of our lives. So while I was in grad school for neurophysiology and endocrinology, I was tutoring medical students. We taught, as we said, the sciences in the prep school, but it always evolved into something else. Like I was teaching biology, chemistry, and all of that, but also then designed a course, medicine and literature. Knowing that tug, between the science and the literary was always quite present. And then we still, to this day, we don't do it formally anymore, although I did teach one semester at NYU's in graduate film program, substituting for someone. We do master classes. We are often in the schools with our films, but it's a different environment now. We're not doing like coursework, but we do master classes and things like that. Thank you. It's getting a little cold in here. I was like, you turned off. Yeah.
That's great. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, sort of your like interdisciplinary background, because a lot of our students say when they apply to graduate programs, the thing that sets them apart from every other student is sort of that interdisciplinary background, maybe like minoring in the humanities and majoring in the sciences. So you're a great example of that, and I love that.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it, Janine, because I think that my experience too is that people are drawn to that as well. It's not a negative. So the passions that people bring may make them more compassionate attorneys, doctors, and have that kind of expression, absolutely, or to any other profession as well. And the same is true for the arts, to have this basis of history and politics and economics influences every part of our being as artists. You have to have some kind of a business sense unless someone's managing you, but for the most part, even then, you want to have your own ability to think. You want to have a knowledge of history and current events, and you want some of the rigor of the sciences to test your hypotheses, to bring something to an experimentational phase, right? We're always experimenting, especially as artists. So understanding that and understanding the rewriting process or the editing process, that the creation of art or other, creative and non-creative media, I guess everything's creative. When you create those things, you have to be willing to experiment and to modify and edit.
Oh yeah, filmmaking is all experimentation. That's exactly what it is. When you film something, you got to take out the camera and you got to experiment for weeks on just, how you want something to be shot. And then when you're editing, you're constantly changing footage and music and sound bites and ideas, and you're throwing away many things, but you're narrowing down your focus and that's helping to narrow down your focus.
No, absolutely. And if you're not open to that, this idea that you create something and it's static and it's done, I think that's quite a rarity if it even exists, because almost every artist that we've admired, filmmakers, painters, photographers, writers, have all talked about the editing process.
Oh yeah, just take a classic painting from the 1800s and do an X-ray of it, and you'll see the original. I was just looking at a Fragonard yesterday for another edit that we were doing, and it's this girl reading a book, and then they did an X-ray, and the painting underneath is almost totally different.
Oh,
And it shows, that this man said, no, I got to change this, so he's literally experimenting on the canvas. And you think, oh, they must have had this idea before they did this painting, and they put it down and that was it. No, so you look at that, and that gives us some relief that, okay, maybe we're doing the right thing too.
And
who knows?
there's an X-ray, the scientific process to reveal that.
There you go.
There you go.
The dispassionate part of it.
Right. And, and also there is the legal sense that, you want to understand that if things need to change, you need to be able to influence laws, as we're seeing every day. Correct. So that's a given as well, to understand the legal process so that we can empower our representatives, who are public servants, who are serving us, to really serve us.
Yeah, if you read the FHA manuals in the 30s, they were so racist. They had such racist covenants in it. And that's our past. That's US history past. That's what we were then. And so that's like an X-ray of what's underneath now, and how we've changed and edited ourselves. And hopefully, we're going to a better place, but that'll only happen if we continue to, work on it.
I appreciate that for two reasons. One, because I'm a history major, and two, because my editing process is very long.
Oh,
It has to be, right?
Yes.
You have no choice.
Do you have an example of that?
When I wrote my senior thesis, it took me last summer and this entire year to complete that. And working with my professor and being able to sort of allow my professor to give me his own opinion without getting offended, and just seeing that as a way that can allow me to grow and be better in my writing and in my work.
Without being offended. I like that.
Yes.
That's so important.
Yeah.
How do you remove yourself from that? You can't really.
Yeah.
But
because you're in a power position, you're writing, this is your work, and you want to express yourself. And at the same time, that ability to listen. I mean, it's not a sign of weakness to listen to other people's thoughts and to say, I didn't see that. And I want my work to be accessible, and I don't want to influence, the writing to a point where I'm not subject to some interpretation. So even with our films, current one with Russ, we had lots of input from certain trusted sources, and that helped us shape the final product. Still maintaining, like I'm sure with your thesis. So you wrote a thesis. That's, wow, I read that about in your bio, and I was wondering about that. Is that a requirement now? And this is undergrad, so.
Yeah, so as a history major, I have to do like a sort of a thesis as my capstone project. And then as part of the honors program, in order to graduate with honors, I have to write a thesis. So St. Peter's let me do one instead of doing two, which I really appreciated. So I just did it in history, but so now I'll be graduating with honors because I did it for the honors program as well.
Fabulous. Yeah, the honors program is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing for us too. It was just, life-changing in many ways.
Can you give me an example of how it was life-changing? At the top of your head, if you can think of something.
Well, sure. I'm thinking of Father McCarty, who in the beginning asked us to recite. It was an honors English class, and he asked us to memorize the least favorite thing that and then recite. I mean, it was brutal, right? But I still remember some of those pieces. He also wrote on one of my papers early on, this is a publishable paper, which I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but it was so encouraging to a scientist to have a literary encouragement. That was huge. And then you want to talk a little bit about Dr. Benson as well, because he was not only a towering presence, but just wow. I mean, think about what he planted in us, Jerome. I mean, just think about it. He was teaching classics and the arts, and everyone migrated to him because he would take us on field trips. And it was just, I mean, you want to say something about John Benson?
Oh yeah, definitely. Dr. Benson, he was my teacher. He was your teacher. I think we took a class together with him, and he was a great spiritual presence to be around. You know, he taught classics and art history, and he taught it using visuals, slides, and images. So that was, you know, right up my alley. I mean, now that I look back at it, in fact, right now we're doing a piece on Saint Elizabeth Ann Seton, and I'm constantly looking at paintings right now to put into the edit. You know, stuff from the 1800s, 1700s, and it's like being in, you know, Dr. Benson's class. So I can see why I loved his class so much. And he was great. His classroom was great to sit in because he was very excited to teach. So and that excited me to watch and listen to him. And I think it was through his course that Marylou and I started to go to, like once a month, we go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Of course, with COVID, we haven't been there since, I think, March of.
Yeah, February was the last time we went.
February 2020 was the last time we went. So we're eager to go. But we've been going since the, you know, early 80s, once a month to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, thanks to Dr. Benson. And in fact, like I said, we make that once a month pilgrimage thanks to St. Peter's, therefore. And the Met is definitely our favorite place in the world to go. It's like church. It's like church with the. It's like church for us, you know, without the guilt. And
yes, that's
did you want to say something about that?
Well, no, I'm just listening because I remember also going to the Museum of Natural History with him. He took us to like some.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Man in Africa.
Yes, I was going to say
That's right.
of Africa.
That's
right.
right.
That was, you know, so not only were we going into New York City, and that was exciting, but we were going like, you know, after hours or, you know, at night or something. We felt very special. It was this group with Dr. Benson, and I could still hear his very booming voice and all that passion. And it was very infectious in the most wonderful way. You know, we owe him a great deal for planting, you know, the seeds of art appreciation. And his classes were very popular and very wonderful.
Oh, you know what I wanted to add? Just another spiritual presence. Father Heavey. You know, Father Heavey was a big deal for me. He wasn't my teacher, but he was the dean of students at the time, and he was full of life. And he was, like I said about Dr. Benson, he was spiritually a great presence to be around.
Right.
And
right, you should mention that part because we talked about him earlier just as like dean of students, but now you're saying that the spiritual is also
he was
huge.
Great, and
you know,
and he married us.
Yes, that's right.
You know, we got married at the Basilica of the Sacred Heart in Newark in 1986, and Father Heavey was up there on the altar with us, you know, giving us that sacrament of holy matrimony. So
yes, we very strongly wanted him to be part of that. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you mentioned some of the other people, and now it's coming to me slowly, and like Bart Urbach, you know, someone that you want to talk about that we are still very much in contact with.
Yeah.
And I'm just making the St. Peter's connections, and there's probably many more that I'm missing, but it was someone that, you know, was certainly a fan of Dr. Benson's and was friendly with us.
Right. He was integral to the college, and you know,
and your music.
I was in a band with him,
right.
And you know, we still get together up till today. So, you know, it was great.
Yes, and there are people that reach out to us periodically who have seen our films that are graduates, and so there's a couple of names that come to mind. So yeah, even though we are not necessarily seeing each other regularly, there's that connection is always like instant familiarity once you meet again and can reconnect so easily.
That's great. I love how it's all coming back.
Yes, you're definitely exercising a part of our brains here that we certainly cherish, but
Mm.
maybe don't fully think about, that frequently. Certainly when we come in contact and we come back to the school, and that's been like a great pleasure to do that, to come back and sit in Pope Hall, sit in the lecture hall where Dr. Benson used to give his lectures and screen our work.
Mm.
And then we also got to know some of the faculty that were doing social justice there when we were filming Father Berrigan in New York City. So there's always, the paths are crossing, and having that sense of community.
But also having that, when you go to the college and you see the cross on the wall, it was something it was very important to me, it was very important to us, and it's very important to me now to see that, because it reminds me home, and it also reminds me of what I believe. It also reminds me of our values. And like you said, it's also a sense of safety for us. And and we know what to expect when we go there, love and care. That's a big deal. Especially, it's a big deal because living in a city, because we live in Newark, that has a high poverty rate. You want to give that out to the rest of the people. You want to say, we had that. We want to give it to you too. We want you to have that.
Right, because
if you don't have it now.
We talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and at the very bottom of that pyramid are the basics: food, water, health, absolutely. But as you start to move up that pyramid, you start to see things like esteem or learning. And at some point there, you have to ask, when you have faith, how does that faith then translate to, as Jerome said, being communicated to others, so that there may be other needs filled other than the basic life needs, that some connection. And we say spirituality, it doesn't have to be religion, but for us, we're Catholics, but it's this idea of connection to something greater. And however, world religions define that, or, we come together with the idea of service to others.
And imagine seeing a guy like Father Heavey or any of those Jesuits. Their life was dedicated to what they were doing for us at that school. Wow, what role models. How could you not, love these people? How could you not feel love from these people? That's true spirituality.
They were self-fulfilled, highly educated, intellectual, charming, gregarious, accessible. I keep using that word because they were present for us. And this, this is asking a lot, as Jerome said.
Yeah.
This is their life. And many of them, as priests, right? They're priests doing their sacramental duties and everything else besides, and many of them being in the classroom. So, you have a very strong role model.
Well, see, that's another thing, not to interrupt you, but
No.
that's another huge thing, that here are these guys like a Father Heavey or another teacher in your class, and then you go downstairs to the chapel and there they are, as the priest in a mass.
Right, they're celebrating mass, right? And there are leaders there as well. So you're seeing them in a different context entirely.
Right, that was exciting to me. And I love that all the time.
Yeah, because that's different. Other students don't really get that at other colleges, like
No,
St. Peter's.
Exactly. I wonder if they did, would it be different for them? I mean, I know it was for me.
Right, because many times people going home to their own families, and they were going back to a community life and living that continued on campus. And it's just different.
Yeah, I mean, here's this person, a man, consecrating the host, taking it from a piece of bread to literally, the body and blood, the host and the wine, body and blood of Jesus. They have the sacrament of holy orders to do that. And they were also teaching you like 15 minutes ago, but now they're doing this now. How is that not special?
And they also then create a community of other faculty that may not be part of the order, but the other faculty, men, women, who appreciate this environment or feel strengthened by it or supported by this environment, and that gets communicated to the students.
Yeah, we have a great interfaith community at St. Peter's. I love that. So would you say that your spirituality is sort of a lens that has influenced the way you saw the larger societal issues during your time at St. Peter's and even today?
Definitely a lens. At the time, we weren't awake, I think, fully to what was happening. We were concerned with each other, right? I mean, we were looking at our futures. We were, working with other people in our environment. But at the same time, I would just say we became fully aware as we started to move out further in the world and realized that we had to take more direct action, that it wasn't enough to just put it into our vocations, but that we needed to, in other words, all of these traits these values that you bring to whatever vocation you choose, but that we bring it to a place that's global. I mean, through the films, we are able to reach global audiences, and that became our tool of communication. We get frustrated by things and we say, all right, how are we going to voice this? This gives voice. So I know that we can reach millions of people and have them immersed in 90 minutes, often in a darkened room, a quiet place, to maybe see things differently. That's been our goal, to get them thinking.
But that's now being engaged in societal issues. I mean, for me, I got to tell you, I don't remember being that engaged in societal issues. And I think that was because I was only interested in you at the time.
Well,
so
likewise, absolutely.
And after I met Marylou, my world, my mind, everything revolved around her, and it still does. So, but now certainly we're definitely more engaged in societal issues.
Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you. I think you're right. I think that at the time we were trying to figure out who we were. We had ambitions. We were, trying to figure that out, not only as individuals, but then we became a couple, and we were, focused on getting into the next level, the graduate programs and things, and working, in that environment, but not really fully seeing the bigger societal issues and questions. That came by living in Newark, by seeing every day, what inequity was happening, why it was happening. We started questioning that with all the films. And then you could sit down and have people of our choosing, for the most part, people who have been very generous, to say, I would like to pick your brain right now, like if we were interviewing you, Ginny, which we started to do. It's like we could sit down and start to ask, what are your thoughts? And those thoughts then help us shape ours.
Well, the interviewer will say something to us, and we'd be
interviewee, you mean?
The interviewee will say something to us that we had never heard before. It's like, yeah, our government was really like that, or our government is really like that now, or we'll go home and we'll do some research and you find out, information that blows your mind, and how could you not then follow that up with more questions of how could it have been like that? How could it still be like that now? How come we're not doing something about that now? This is ludicrous.
Correct. And then you have to be very attentive and listen to people, because even when we were doing Revolution 67, there was a time, Life magazine cover story, it seemed very clear what was happening. You said a photo spread throughout it. I mean, this was now almost 40 years after the event. We understood it. And then we interviewed the photographer who came to our home, and we interviewed him here, Bud Lake. And he told us a completely mind-blowing story about what really happened. And it just shakes your foundation. I thought this, it's in here, you captured the sensational image. Everything was frenetic at the time. And he told us it was quite the opposite.
Yeah, how the picture was set up. I mean, you have to see it. And then, the cops rushed in and killed the person that he was featuring in his photo spread. The person died in front of him.
He ran, and then, but it was the idea that he said nothing was happening. They set up something relatively innocuous, and then not only did someone die in the process because he ran from police, but then it also became emblazoned in Life magazine as this image of something that was completely fabricated and then turned tragic. I mean, how would you know that?
Right.
If you just picked up,
You just saw the picture.
right. And I actually have one of them in the Life. Well, I might have to find it, but it just shows you how dramatic something is, and yet it's not exactly. And then that happened throughout. We would interview someone who was part of the National Guard, who was, very much in belief that certain automatic weapons were, only being used by snipers, and that was his belief for 40 years. And then we came across some footage by accident that showed Newark police carrying automatic weapons. So, you put that into the film, and it becomes investigative journalism. It's just saying, what do you believe? What's in a newspaper? What's being transmitted in the news? And is it true? And that becomes only because we did that type of work that we started asking those types of questions. In a laboratory, you do tests and you repeat these tests, and then you have a certain scientific method, and then you can say, here's, peer review and see what you think of my process. Here, not so clear.
Because you can't get clear answers from people, Unfortunately, especially politicians, you can't get clear answers from them, because they have vested interests. They're worrying about the people who are going to pay for their next campaign. They don't want to say things against them. And so you don't ever get the full story. So, but as people who make documentaries and also fictional films, you want to put the correct situation into your script. You want to offer the correct situation to people who are watching your documentary. You want to tell the truth,
Right.
Or you want to get at as much of the truth as possible, not only for your audience, but also for yourself. These documentaries are to teach us about what's going on, and then we hope that the audience will also learn something.
Right. And then when we get to a point where we say we want to control it more, we can create a fictional film. So on Tuesday, we're showing clips of one of our fictional films called The Black Monk. It's based on Anton Chekhov's short story. We actually showed parts of it in a literary conference on site at St. Peter's University. So we were able to participate with that. And it combines all of our thoughts and histories, and in the shape of this Benedictine monk. We made him Benedictine, but it brings all the things we just talked about. Our past as the main character is a filmmaker who went to medical school, who had so we were able to then transform what was classic literature into something that we adapted into our personal lives and made it a contemporary story, but bringing together a lot of questions. The two characters talk about abortion, bringing two different viewpoints so that people can engage in our thought process too. And you can use fiction as a way of doing that. We also do museum installation films because we love museums, as Jerome told you, but also as a way to celebrate. And for a whole series that we did, which are city symphonies, to celebrate what's endured in places like Newark and Brooklyn and Staten Island, places that were our birth homes and our current home, and in ways that you can now celebrate things, because we're not just problem-based, we're also solution-based, and we also have to express a level of gratitude and celebrate what's beautiful, because in all of these circumstances, in the most extreme conditions, we look for some inspiration and hope and beauty. No. It's I was just reflecting on the point of creating these things. And Jerome is right, though. It was only through doing the work that, especially for documentaries, but some with fiction too. Because, for example, in my thesis film at NYU, which I was working with Spike Lee as mentor, we depicted, it's called 1967, and we depicted snipers, because that's in the newspaper up until I think we made a big point of, and others certainly, that there was no evidence of sniper fire in 1967 in Newark, and that's contradicts, as I said, the newspapers and some history books. And that was the theme, and that led us to go and say, let's do more research, and that led to the documentary being done.
Yeah, when they at that point, then we're refuting that the sniper idea, and we're now calling it a myth. You know, we're saying no, there were no snipers. You know, if killings happened, it was because of state police and National Guard, and
not communicating on the same frequencies,
right.
And so it's friendly fire.
Right. Well, it's friendly fire when they sort of, well, there was a fireman,
sure, police detective too.
A police detective, and that, you know,
They died.
yeah, and that's most probably friendly fire. And then there's that's, what was it, 24, 26 deaths, and then
26 people altogether.
26, and then I guess 24 civilian deaths, which are from state police or National Guard or Newark police. So, and that sort of debunks the idea that there are snipers, which then clears the air of talking about snipers in any other deaths during riots now. You know, so now people can use an example of our film to say, you know, let's take this idea of sniper off the table. It's not that. It's ineffectiveness of local law enforcement. They are most likely causing the deaths.
The violence, yeah.
The violence.
So when you see violence, right? And so we still have issues of police, you know, questionable police activity. Not all, but I'm just saying that there is obviously, and that's a big part of our.
Yeah, and you'll still see today in newspapers where they're trying to force the issue that the violence or the deaths that you're seeing is due to snipers again. You know, because they will use that as an excuse.
Right, it distracts from analyzing what really happened. So we looked at, you know, ballistics, and you know that we did a very scientific approach to getting at the truth and saying you have to prove to us that this existed, and there was no way to do that. Right,
and then of course, then you have to, by extension, you got to say, well, what is this violence about? And then you have to say, well, then it comes back to racism again. You know, you're talking about law enforcement that is killing other people because I guess they feel that they can do so.
So for you, your work is about engagement and truth and investigating those things that people maybe just take for granted because they read something and they believe it.
Say that again.
I said for you, your work is about truth and engagement and questioning things that maybe other people don't because they read something in a newspaper and they just take it for granted.
Right.
We want to go beyond what's stated and have it verified and have it analyzed first, right? So in the process of trying to verify the truth, and that's true every day.
Well, it's not like we will do a movie like Revolution 67 and we'll say, you know, I don't think there were really snipers. We don't say that. We believe it. We go into yeah, we'll believe it, and then we'll find something and say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make, you know, scientific sense with this fact. And then all of a sudden something's uncovered and you're like, wait a minute, is it possible that there were no snipers? And then that gets you on that train of thought. But we don't, like, for instance, Renaissance.
I was just going to say that.
I want to say that. Say it.
Are you going to say that?
No, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to say
it. Yeah. So people were using the word that Newark is in a renaissance. since forever. And we started making Revolution 67, the first film in the trilogy, in the early 2000s with that thesis.
The movie was called Newark, no,
Then and Now.
1967, Newark, Then and Now.
Yes, that's what we were going to
Okay, now premise, we were set on this premise that Newark was in a renaissance, current renaissance.
And it was only by talking with historians and political scientists and activists that we realized that was not the case, and that word has been used, and we traced it in the newspaper every so often. Newark's in a renaissance. Newark's in a renaissance. Everybody resurrects that, particularly politically, at key points. And it's like, what is the Renaissance? It was supposed to be 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Every 4 years it comes up, and I wonder why it's every 4 years.
Exactly.
And then you realize that this is a theme, or it's used by the politicians, also by the developers, right? That's huge, and power brokers to, I guess the best way to say, sucker investors into ponying up their money to put it into real estate, into a city, so that they tell people, well, we're in a renaissance, give me your money so I can build stuff. So we get the impression of reading a newspaper, thinking that it's the truth, that it's really in a renaissance. And then silly us, the filmmakers, we're making a film on this.
Yeah.
And then a quarter of the way through it, we're realizing that many of our interviewees are saying, look at the stats. What are you talking about, Renaissance? And then
it's humbling.
Then things start to dawn on you, and that's when the movie really starts.
And that's when it tests the funders who allow you to do it, to tell the truth. And some have had the courage to say that to us, that we want you to tell the truth, because you are now not catering to their special interests.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, you would think these big corporations would say, oh, I don't want part of this. But you'd be surprised. They want truth just as much as anybody else. And they're happy that you go after the truth.
Right. And one of the journalists from the New York Times, Ron Smothers, that we had interviewed, said that he taught a course on how to read a newspaper, to students. Maybe it was even law students. I'm not even sure about that. But it was, wow, you need to teach someone how to read a newspaper, to extract from it
the real information.
Right. Because editors have, agendas, and certainly we know certain papers are slanted in a certain direction. And if it doesn't fit that narrative, then it's not going to be communicated. So to get a balanced article means news item, we have to read many sources. And that's what we try to do for everything, even small issues, larger issues too. We're constantly doing that. Oh, I just noticed that my name is on here. I should have put both of us. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't notice either.
No, I didn't even think about it. I'll correct it now. Okay, Jerome. Okay, there we go. Rename, just in case you.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. But it's funny because in your yearbook, one of the profiles, it said of something in Marylou, like they coupled you. So they coupled us even then.
Good.
Okay, so they knew that.
Correct.
So
correct.
So, and the Bongiorno is there, so that's important.
Well, I certainly have a lot to learn from you, especially before I start law school. So I'm definitely going to make sure to watch all of your films if I can get my hands on them.
Yes, well, Rust is now the current, and I think it's a good place to start. I really do. So it is on PBS through June 17th.
Mm-hmm.
I can send you a link. Yes, I think you'll find the legal part. Had some attorneys watch it and wrote to us. Someone from criminal justice last night, because it's screening around the country, and some people which is wonderful. They write to us. And some of the attorneys said that they did not know, had never heard some of the legal terms and laws and things, particularly related to slavery. So they had no idea of the laws that were passed, and then black codes and things. So I am very eager to bring this to the law community, and likely we'll meet up again in one of wherever you choose, because we work with both. school. So that would be great. And yes, and to give us your feedback, which we would greatly appreciate it. Again, listen, we have to listen to, our leaders, our emerging leaders, and we would love to have that feedback from you. Thank you.
No, thank you. And to conclude, my final question, because I know I've taken a lot of your time and I really appreciate it. Do you think St. Peter's is an important institution of higher learning? And if so, why?
Yes. Do you want to?
Yes, I think it's important. I mean, I think I stated this before.
Why don't you put in a sentence too that with St. Peter's?
Well, St. Peter's College, when I went there, now St. Peter's University is definitely an important institution of higher learning, because there is a cross on the wall in the school. And for me to see that, for me to understand that that's the basis of that institution, it means everything. It's very important to me.
Yes, absolutely. So St. Peter's University has the highest standards for learning set by the Jesuits, and by their example, the community they created, whether it's other faculty, whether it's students, whether it's the people who are working on campus, we are all lifted and challenged by this high standard. So St. Peter's University, cross on the wall, highest standard for learning by the Jesuits. Thank you for what you've given us.
Yeah, and the cross on the wall is not to proselytize or evangelize or to convert people to Catholicism. It's not about that. It's about the value system behind it. It's about spirituality. It's about love, and that's what it represents to us. And it also represents that we need to be there for other people, not for ourselves. We need that to be. We need to be there for other people.
Yes, it brings us back, which is a great way. We started and we end with St. Ignatius Loyola and this medal that we look at every day. Scholarship, absolutely. Loyalty, to a community, to the greater community. But it's the last word that really resonates with us, which is service. So thank you to St. Peter's University. Thank you to the inspiration you provide to young leaders like Janine and others to continue that tradition. It's very, very important. We're strong advocates for Catholic schools to continue, particularly in inner cities. We're very troubled by the closing of some of the high schools and grammar schools. We work very actively to try to combat that and to keep that tradition going, and all power to universities like St. Peter's. Thank you.
And would you like to share anything that I haven't asked you?
Good point, because that's usually how I end my interviews with everyone, and that's where we've triggered wonderful things. Is there something you want to add, though? Because we've said a lot. I don't know.
No, I think
I feel like you're a great interviewer, because you jumped on what we said, you probed, and you listened. So that's very key. I think we've pretty much. Yeah.
Also, you seem to have great interviewing technique, because it seems like you consider this a conversation between you and us, which makes it a great interview. It's not just, well, here are the questions, let me ask you, bloop, you say it, and then I'll go over to the next question, and then, it's, and that's the way we conduct our interviews. We're always interrupting our interviewees, and so it's a conversation, and the person feels comfortable, and also you're getting at your ideas as you're talking to the person. It's great. It's a great job.
Great job, Janine.
Oh, thank you. This has been a learning experience for me. So I've been trying different things, asking Lauren, who you met, ways that I can be better. So I really appreciate that you had fun. I hope you had fun during this interview.
No, it's a great pleasure, and it's wonderful that you're recording it. I see the recording light going.
Yeah, this is a
because-
great process. You don't even have to take out the camera anymore.
No.
You don't have to go to a place. You
Yeah.
just, we're at our home, you're at your home. This is great. And you've recorded this and you've archived it. Wow, this is so great.
I have to say that as
Technology.
wonderful as it is to be visiting campus, because we're close to Newark, Jersey City, it has been our practice for decades to use tools, video conferencing, free tools, to be in Romania, to be in Africa, to be in, you know, parts of Canada, all over the world. As I mentioned, Tuesday we'll be in Berlin. And I don't know that if there's a bright lining to all of this, that we're able to use these types of technologies so that we aren't prevented from having these conversations and, you know, the ability to exchange our work and do it in a free environment, or mostly free. I know some of these are subscription, but you know, that's been a great tool for us in the past. And I think some people didn't realize how important that tool is. I hope that maybe through this pandemic, people start to understand that you can have, you know, hundreds. Like we had an event for us that PSEG hosted at NJPAC, and normally it would have been in person, or like our Prudential premiere of it a month ago was virtual, and normally we would have done it, you know, in a big setting. But we had hundreds of people from all over the world participate, and that would not have happened if we had a live event. So here's to experimentation, here's to being open to new technologies, here to making it so that we're not inhibited by cost and things or technology, that we can't have this kind of conversation. So I really applaud the university for recording these and not just asking for written, because these are records that live. And that's why we migrated from doing plays to doing film, because plays are wonderful, but usually they're just, you know, an ephemeral thing that, you know, is over unless you record it, obviously. But it's not, you know, the same as film, where we can do this and this kind of
you can
interview.
craft the images, and you can craft the editing, and you can craft the timing and the music. It's great.
Yes, and this can be edited too.
That's
Our
right.
piece can be edited
Yeah.
for length and extract pieces and all of that. But it's very smart that you asked that question at the end. I mean, I think you were very comprehensive, and we went into other areas. So I don't, but we have had interviewees really give us gems in those last moments. So it's a very good thing to ask.
Yeah.
Thank you again. It was an honor to meet you. It's so cool meeting people who went to St. Peter's and graduated, and to see what they did, because we're sort of at that position now, figuring out what we want to do. So it's always great to see people who actually did it. So I really appreciate that.
And as an alumni network, I mean, we are here for you too. And people have reached out to us. We've reached out to alumni. And that's an important part of being a community, that it doesn't end with graduation. That is certainly not the case.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to experiment with things.
Yeah.
Doing things, different walks of life. You know, because you've got to satisfy yourself, because that's where you've been given those talents. And if you have a talent, you got to use it for other people, you know. So if you feel that there's something in you that you have to get out, explore that to get it out, find out what it is, so that you can then give it away to other people. And
that requires a level of courage and risk taking.
It does require courage.
But
that's
it's
true.
your life. We're all unique. I was reminded of many things I read this week of that we're all genetically unique in our thinking. Even, you know, twins and things have different thought processes. So as you have a different thinking, and you have a different unique gift, no one can really dictate who we are. We have to explore that, and we have to be open to things. And
well, that's why our relationship was important, because you gave me the courage, and hopefully I gave you the courage back, to be able to do things that we might not have been
absolutely,
to do on our own. have had the courage to do on our own.
Which means that people can seek out others to help, that you're not alone too. If you need that kind of support, I think everyone needs some kind of support and network. That's why we still are part of filmmaking
It gives you
collectives and
it gives you the courage.
mentorships.
Yeah.
And if you have something to do, I think if I had to go back in time, I mean, in hindsight, I would say seek mentors, seek people that you are doing what you think you want to do.
It's not easy to find them. Don't think you're going to find the first one. Oh, this is going to help me. No, it's going to take some time.
It usually works for me and for Jerome when we find someone that strikes us as they've done something, whether it's in the newspaper or it's something they've created that we admire. And usually it leads to some kind of connection to that person that has some common ground. It always has in some way or another. But seek someone out to ask these questions. I think people would be receptive in every profession to someone who's starting, and if they have a strong enough reason for making the case. But anyway, find the way, right? Your own way to get some feedback, and also go and work in that profession.
Yeah, you have to.
We picked up a camera, made a film before thinking of film school. And certainly now we say with people's cell phones, it's like, cell phone cinema, it has really democratized the process. Their cost factor isn't there, just like we talked about this. Like you could be making a film right now based on this footage, just like we finished Rush. You'll see there's a few interviews that were done this way. So there's really no reason to prevent anyone from recording their important voice. Whatever they decide to explore or to investigate, put it together and have a record of it.
Get a simple editing application. You're a filmmaker.
Kids are editing.
Yeah, you got your cell phone. Go out and take some pictures outside. Those are yours. Yeah, the sky's the limit.
And we had someone write to us this week who's finishing up his third year at Seton Hall Law School, who had a bumpy road getting there with personal struggles with addiction and other things, who then wants to apply his life experiences to his law advocacy and activism. So that's encouraging too, that people have something that they want to bring that's relevant to who they are as individuals and are brave enough to share their paths.
Really encouraging.
Yeah, because you'll find in graduate level, especially we did, people from all walks of life. In film school, it was not just an artistic group. There were doctors, there were lawyers, there were people coming from industry, there were people that were older, people that were just out of college. So it's just, you have something to say. And I would say challenge, others too. What do you want to do with your life? And you have been given this opportunity. We're also grateful to be part of this incredible planet and have, for many of us, the opportunities and not so many personal struggles, perhaps, or obstacles, that we're given the opportunity to have education, as you mentioned, that we can then, apply ourselves to fulfilling ourselves. Who are we as individuals, and how can we serve others? So I tell people, we're talking this week to some students, it's serve others, do for others. If we can leave one message, reduce poverty is our mantra, what we keep for ourselves in our activism. When people say, oh, there's too many problems in Newark, and shrug their shoulders, it's like, no, it's one problem. Reduce the poverty and graduation rates go up, the crime will go down, you'll start to see, better conditions. And I would say for others that are in any kind of self analysis, it's like, what are you doing for others? Do for others, and you will find a fulfillment that will exceed any of what your perceived problems are.
Without any monetary
expectation.
Right?
I mean, I know you said you had nothing to add, but that was great.
I'm glad you prompted it. So Thank you. And if there's something that you need from us, you'll let us know. And this will be, I guess, archived and cataloged. And at some point, maybe we could have access to others, and we'd love to watch this, I guess, down the line.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's going to be editing it. I think it might be Dr. Johnson, because he's in charge of the whole process. but I will definitely keep in contact with everybody and hopefully let you know, or maybe Lauren will let you know when it'll be available to watch.
I'm sure it's a long time project. We understand the length of that. We actually have another prized acknowledgement from the university, from Dr. Johns. It's a Social Justice Award, Martin Luther King, that we received a few years ago from the university, and we're very, very honored to have that. It's gone from, it's clearly that the social justice is what we're communicating, and so we look forward to bringing Rust to campus, hopefully in the fall, and or this way, which we said is just so very efficient and wonderful to be able to engage with students and be back and talking. And the most important thing is to keep the dialogue going.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully I can be back in the fall too. When you guys come back, like I always tell Lauren, I am not going anywhere. It's hard to get rid of me.
Wonderful. You'll find that. That's why we're here, right?
That's good. This is your college.
Yes,
this is your university. You have to
stay connected and use that, because it'll be a support to you in your work as well. I mean, I never even think about the networking opportunities that are available, but certainly we saw that with some attorneys that graduated from local schools you mentioned that are in our neighborhood, that then got appointments through connections through their college and high schools. And that's important. People do recognize that, and they see it also as an imprimatur that you did the work and you have a work ethic and you're disciplined.
Yeah.
Which obviously you've shown. And so we wish you much success. I'm sure it'll be a great adventure. And reflect on which place is best for you. I'm sure you'll find, there's no wrong decision here. They're both wonderful. And I do see that the law schools, through their mock trial, courts, they're sort of, that they're doing creative things too. I was actually looking to explore some of that and use our films and others. The same way that the medical students, we become very engaged with medical schools. Our films are shown there because we've made connections with some faculty. And it's a wonderful way for these students to also flex their creative muscles and to start thinking about who they're analyzing. They use our films many times as case histories to understand someone that maybe that comes in with a psychosis, for example, like in our film, but they don't know all their history and background. And that the understanding of taking a very detailed life history of spending time is also part of humanism, right? Of being aware of the person as an individual, not just a medical diagnosis. So, and I'm sure for the legal profession and other professions, I mean, we've been focusing on science and law because of the three of us. But, in many cases, all of these things about what's going on behind the obvious, someone's prosecuted or, jailed or something. In our film in Rust, you'll also see that we spend time in the prisoner reentry program here in Newark to talk about the role of counseling, because what we're seeing is that the prison system, which is supposed to be correctional, is really, the recidivism rates show something otherwise, right? So it's, and we talk about it as the legacy of slavery, as we went through different forms of imprisoning people and keeping them incapacitated. So when we spent time with prisoner reentry program, it was eye-opening too, how much of it was spent on basic counseling. So you'll see that one of someone who was jailed for 30 years for a homicide, then resurrected, and through this counseling program, but he needed financial counseling because he was never taught as a young man how to balance a checkbook, and you have to start to realize those things. Someone just told me last week, a filmmaker said, I didn't realize until I watched that, oh, that's what's happening here, and where credit cards and debt come in.
But then think about all the people in the inner city who are poor or in a cycle of poverty that aren't getting that basic knowledge, and they're not, not criminals, they're not going to jail, but they don't have that basic knowledge either. And so you can understand how that debilitates the community, not having that basic understanding to begin with.
Or if federal and banking covenants prevented people of color from home ownership. And we detail that, from bank redlining to all the, not being able to get loans, then you're not communicating because you don't own a home. You're not able to give that to your children. And then you see this enormous wealth gap, income gap, and wealth gap between people of various races. So, and you start asking, well, why is that?
Well, and then a conservative person would say, okay, well, then that's their fault, the people in the inner city. And
they're
then
lazy.
Right. From the person who now understands that information, then you get a whole different idea of, first of all, your own ignorance. And then you see how society has just created barriers that still exist today. And then you understand. Then there's the enlightenment. Hopefully, there's the enlightenment.
I think that since both of your schools are Newark based, it'll be interesting to get your feedback on this too. Because when you realize that over 70% of Newarkers are renters, they don't have home ownership. All of those factors kick in, and you understand that if you can't own a home, you can't pass that on to your children, and that's something that many of us take for granted or may take for granted in the future. But anyway, there's a lot of legal in there, and we can keep the dialogue going. And as I said, we'll most likely be in the law schools probably at a time when you are, and maybe we can bring you into that conversation, which we've done. We've done that in the medical schools, right? With some students that we worked with, and they've become part of that. So nice to meet you. And thank you for your time. Wow, we talked a long time. Wow.
Okay,
right.
That's the best part. Yeah. Thank you again. I have your contact information, so hopefully we can stay in touch, and hopefully I can see you in the fall, maybe, depending on if it's in person. But Zoom is great too.
Well, when you're in law school, invite us in to your class, whatever. Tell your teacher.
Yeah, we've done that.
We'll be happy. Seton Hall, Rutgers, we're there.
Yep, we're always there.
We're always there to begin with.
So. And this is the kind of connection that brings us to that. Yeah, we can do that. And I'll send you the link to watch Rust and give us your comments. That would be awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So till the next time.
Yes.
Lots of peace, right? Thank you for this lovely opportunity. I needed it, actually. It's been very affirming to think about the past and start to formulate questions. So we appreciate that. Till the next time.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.